You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby.
All right, folks, welcome back to Right Up Meridian. Scott here with you. I got Tony on the other side. We're excited. It's not really the halfway point because it's, like 60% of the season, but it's kind of a good halfway point of the season. Wanted to get something down before we get into the All-Star festivities. Just a quick shout out to our friends at the Back Home Network. Tons of great shows. Check them out. Also, we are sponsored by Homefield Apparel. Check them out. They'll probably have some good All-Star gear coming up. They just dropped a whole new IU collection with the Hyper sweatshirt that is coming my way. So really good stuff. Tony, man, how you doing?
I am fantastic. And yes, that home field drop was magnificent. I got the Hyper shirt as well.
Yep.
I got the corduroy hat that I don't know if we'll ever be able to actually pull off, but it looked so cool. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to buy it. My wife's like,
I have so many of those things in my closet where I'm
really
like, this like, can I pull this off? And the answer is normally no. For me, it was the 90s, the Kangol hat, the Samuel L. Jackson look, which I tried but didn't pull off.
Yeah, I mean, so I got the corduroy hat off my bucket list. You know, it's something I've really been dying to buy. So we're good to go.
So this weekend, we'll get into the All-Star stuff here in a sec. But, so we have, I thought last night's game was real. So we don't normally do a game-by-game breakdown here, but watch most of last night's game. I thought last night's game was really important because I started thinking about it. Like, the Pacers had just lost to the Hornets, 111-102, a game that they had in the fourth quarter and kind of let slip away. And then they're playing the Raptors, and it's a game they got down, they came back, and it was really nip and tuck there at the end. They won by 2. I thought that was a really important win because when you go back to earlier in the season in November, they lost to the Hornets on the 4th of November. They lost to the Raptors on the 22nd. And I know you can't beat everybody all the time, but the Hornets are just not a good basketball team. They are 13-41 with 2 wins against the Pacers. That's 15% of the wins the Hornets have this season are against the Pacers. And I was just like, you can't lose to the Hornets and the Raptors, kind of not totally back-to-back, but lose to both of them again. I think you and I are both kind of in the same agreement. I don't think this Pacers team is going to win the NBA title. I don't see them going to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I do think the East is a little more open than people would think. I also think they have an opportunity to get a seed in the tournament, not be in the play-in, and also, possibly get a protected seed, so to speak. And I just think you've got to start putting away some of these bad teams. It's a feature this team has that I don't particularly like. And I was looking at it, if you just take those 3 games, the Hornets, the Raptors, and the Hornets again, if you just take those all to wins, which isn't saying much because those are bad teams, the Pacers would be 34-22 right now. That would put them in the 4 seed ahead of the Knicks based on having one more win. That's a huge difference than the 6 seed. And then you're at that point, you are, 4 games ahead of the Heat. It's just, I look at this and I don't know if we should be concerned or just like, hey, it's still a young team that's figuring its way. I look at this as like, you're almost getting to a point of like a missed opportunity of a season where you could have had a much better seed because you just can't put away these bad teams.
Totally agree. And, it's interesting to look at. And when I think about like the dichotomy of the team, I think it really speaks to their youth. Like, it's easy to get up for the Bucks and the Celtics and, the play-in tournament and all that stuff. And like, you look at the Pacers against the top 3 seeds in the East, I think they're like 12-6 or something crazy. Like their record is really, really good against the best teams in the East. And then when you look at their record against kind of some of the bottom feeders, it's like, that's interesting. Like, it's worse than them and they play the best team. So to me, it speaks to the youth of the team of like, it's a business. You got to be ready to go for every single game. Carlisle noted it after the Hornets game. Like, team wasn't ready to play. He took the blame for that, which is the vet coach move.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, those guys got to lock in each and every single night, especially if you're a playoff team, and then you want to get to that upper echelon of teams where you kind of get a target on your back every single night. Tyrese Haliburton is kind of like the young guy that everybody's starting to talk about in the NBA. Well, like guys want to lock him down now.
Yeah.
Like he's always been number one on the scouting report, but now it's like I'm going to lock him down, and I'll get talked about. So it's like it comes with the growing pains. I mean, it's what's happening with some of these games. It's to me, in my opinion, obviously, just youth kind of rearing its ugly head. Obviously, the injuries don't help as well. But to me, that's kind of like what you got to go through to be that next level of team.
Yeah, I agree. It's you don't want to rush the process, but when you just look at the East and you look at where they're at and where they could be, I think that's the frustrating part is like, man, you could give yourself a really kind of an interesting path somewhere in the playoffs. But we'll see. They come back, like as you look at the season after the the schedule after the All-Star break, they come back, they have a nice 4-game stand at home against the Pistons, Mavericks, Raptors, and Pelicans. And it's just like, again, with this team, it's like you got to figure out a way to start putting those Pistons Raptors games away where it's not, you're figuring this out in the fourth quarter or the last 2 or 3 minutes, because that Mavericks Pelicans game are going to be a little bit tougher. And then, you go back on the road. It's weird. Then you're playing like the Pelicans, the Mavericks on the road next with the Spurs interspersed there. And it's like that's what I would like to see in the second half, is this team starting to kind of put those bad teams away a little bit earlier, and then maybe still being a little inconsistent here and there. But I don't know. It was a thought that I had, but I'm happy to see them get it done against the Raptors. Although, my God, I mean, they gave up so many offensive rebounds to Toronto down the stretch, where they were playing really good defense and then would just let the Raptors get an offensive rebound and just piss it all away. And it's getting frustrating. It's like, man, this is a game we really, and like there was, I think, 5 or 6 times down the court where we were up by 3 and like no one was scoring, but the Raptors were getting 2 or 3 shots per time. And it's like, I'm impressed with the defense, but it's also like, this is not a defense that I want to put that kind of pressure on, at the end of games.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I thought, yeah, I'm with you. I thought the defense really kind of locked down last night, but you got to finish the possession with the defensive rebound. And fortunately, as you mentioned, like getting that win last night was great. Like heading into the All-Star break, because I mean, no question about it, the Pacers limped into the All-Star break.
Yep.
I mean, you've got, Nesmith got hurt last night. Miles Turner was sick. Mathurin didn't play. So they certainly were shorthanded. So to be able to like go on the road, you've got an emotional Pascal Siakam. He's playing back in Toronto for the first time since being traded, where his whole career had been played. So like there was a lot of things that were working against the Pacers last night. Now, what was working in their favor is that the Raptors stink and aren't very good. But at the end of the day, they sealed the deal and won going into the All-Star break. Like that is the right momentum that you need to like get a refresh, get some guys healthy, and then you can hit the ground running this last 30 games of the season or whatever it is.
So as we look at where they're at now, if we kind of consider this, obviously not the halfway point, but kind of the 60% point marker, I think obviously the highlight takeaways are this team that plays well against good competition. This is a team that plays well against the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a team that played well in the in-season tournament. It had a nice little run after the in-season tournament. This is a team that also, played inconsistently against bad opponents. This is a team that also, has had injury issues since Haliburton went down. They've been kind of rotative. Although I do wonder how much of that is just Carlisle kind of letting them limp into the All-Star break. Like you had a lot of like Ben Mathurin kind of just sitting, not sure if he's injured. And like Jalen Smith has been nursing something. And like, I do wonder if, Carlisle's been trying to kind of just gut this out and get through the dog days. But as you look at that, like what is your take on the first half of this season? Like anything to highlight, any players outside of, I mean, Tyrese Haliburton has definitely taken the step up this year, but just kind of curious, open-ended, what do you take from this first half of the season for the Pacers?
Yeah, 40,000-foot view is a lot of fun. I look back to, the in-season tournament, making the finals. Like it was kind of a welcome to the show party for the Pacers, and finally got some national attention. Tyrese Haliburton, obviously got a ton of attention based on his play in that in-season tournament, and outdid the expectations of what maybe not you and I thought, but I think the Pacers win total over under was like 34 this year going into the season, or 36. Like I've already almost reached that.
Yeah.
So I think outdoing some national expectations and obviously the sportsbook expectations, and then the front office making a big move. Like it's move number two, kind of like, all right, we know we've got something here, let's build on it. And like there's no more like tanking or trying to get draft picks or whatever the case may be. It's like, all right, we've got a solid core here. How do we build on that? So overall, very, very excited about the trajectory of the team. I thought the first half of the season was fun, like in the grand scheme of things. And obviously there were some not fun moments. Obviously the Tyrese Haliburton injury, which we got to witness with each other at that game, was nerve wracking. And I'm sure we'll touch on this in a bit, but him then coming back too early and kind of talking yesterday, he talked about why he came back, which was what you and I had kind of guessed on this podcast, was because of money. But yeah, so overall, excited about the trajectory of the team. Was excited about the way the Pacers played. Now, some like negative things would be obviously the defense is not very good, although they have gotten better as the season has gone on. But there's still way too many stinkers, giving up 70 points and a half. I think they gave up, did they give up 80 and a half at one point? Or
it's possible.
Hawks or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's things that you can't do if you want to be like a team that's actually being serious about contending. Player wise, most of the guys have been what I expected or better. Mathurin still one to me. I'm trying to figure out. I would have liked to see a bigger jump in his play this season, but at the same time, it's like you've got Haliburton that's kind of dominating the ball and figuring out where guys are at. And Mathurin's played with that second unit, so like at least a lot. I think he started 15 games this season or something like that. So yeah, I mean those are kind of the negative things that I would look at this season, and not necessarily negative, but just like areas of opportunity for the team to grow is obviously defense, and then individually, just would like to see Mathurin take a bigger step here these last 20, 30 games.
Yeah, you look at Haliburton's numbers, it feels like, this break, there's a world, I think we talked about it before. I wish this is the 1 year. Like, it's great that he's a starter. It's great it's an indie, but it's also like he could use some time off, but he's not going to get it. Like, he's going to be run all over city. But he's also 23, 24 years old. And as somebody who's in his mid-40s, like, I do know that, being younger, you can recover pretty well. It looks like just in the eye test, the last 2 or 3 games, he's kind of gotten his form back. Looks like he's gotten his bounce back in his step. It feels like he's getting back to very close to 100%. The game against, I think it was the Warriors, where he had 5 points, 11 assists, but 3 turnovers. Like, he just didn't look like he was back. It looked like he had just gotten, and that was, on the course of 3 games in 6 days. It looked like he had been worn out. They've kind of kept the same pace, but he's gotten back to 22, 13, 21 points with 12, 12, 12. Jeez, he's so consistent. 12, 12, 12 assists. So I mean, that's good. It feels like he's getting back. I want to pull up Mathurin's like season over season stats, but I agree with you on the Mathurin piece. It does feel like he needs to, you only have 2 seasons to look at, but you look at his like true shooting percentage is pretty much the same as last year. His effective field goals gone up a little bit. He's finishing at the rim a little bit less. His mid range has gone up. His 3-point shooting has slightly gone up, but just game to game impact, it doesn't feel like he's taken the mantle of the number 2. I mean, as you look at this team, like, I would say on a game in, game out night, like, there's most nights, we haven't fully seen Siakam brought into this team. I would say Aaron Nesmith is probably our number 2. Siakam looked pretty good. I would love to see more out of him, but it's still very early in the process with him. And then I think on other nights, there's nights where Miles Turner is playing at a number 2, number 3 type level. That's the thing with Mathurin is I would have loved to see what Nesmith is doing now out of Mathurin. And the concerning part for Mathurin is you starting to see little glimpses of it from other people as well. Like last night, Ben Shepherd played really well. The last possession had a fantastic defensive stand. and you're like, man, Shepard's looking pretty good. Like other guys are starting to show glimpses. You know, Jalen Smith is starting to shoot well from outside. Like other people are starting to find ways they can help this offense, ways they can help this defense. I'm not saying Mathurin's not helping, but there is this like, man, like you've got to start growing at a faster clip. And that's the concerning part for me about Mathurin, because either him or Jarris Walker or somebody else has to kind of move up and continue going. Maybe it's Nesmith. Maybe it just ends up being Nesmith and he takes it over. But it's like, I agree with you. That's the part of this team where it's like, if they're going to really hit the nitro button, you know, it always felt like Mathurin has to be that guy. Maybe we're just looking in the wrong place, and it is going to be Nesmith.
Yeah, it's if you would have told me like Nesmith was going to have the season that he's having, you know, with the numbers he's put up, and you know, his shooting has been tremendous. Like to me, he fits better into like everything else. Like to me, Mathurin's a guy that kind of needs the ball in his hands, where Nesmith can kind of be a secondary playmaker and creator. And I think that's why Carlisle has moved Mathurin to the bench more times than not, because he does need that ball in his hands and to kind of get himself engaged. And like, that's part of just the growing up process too. I mean, at the end of the day, he's 21 years old.
Yeah.
Something like that. 22. Like he's still young in his career and still figuring this thing out. And don't get me wrong, he's still averaging 14 a game and 36% from three. So I'm not like trying to dog on him, but I also like, you know, they drafted him with the idea of him kind of ascending to that number 2. And I remember having these conversations, you know, a decade ago about Paul George. In his second year, he kind of had some ups and downs. And I was like, man, like, I remember he put up a goose egg in his second year, one game. And I'm like, if he wants to be that next level player that he's trying to be, like, he's got to be more consistent night in, night out. Now, obviously, he took that, ran with it, and he's been tremendous, you know, in the NBA for a decade now. But that's kind of what I was hoping to see out of Mathurin, and haven't seen it, like, consistently. Like, he's put up some games where it's like, man, like, I love that this guy is a pacer. And then there's also some games where it's like, damn, like, was he even playing?
Yep. No, I completely agree. You know, I think on the positive side, you look at Nesmith, what he's done has been just fantastic. When you look at his numbers, you know, year over year, it's insane. Like his estimated plus minus is, again, these are some stats off of dunks and threes, which is kind of advanced stats, but you know, it's not a perfect number, but it's like, it is just on a hockey curve up. He's a plus 0.9, almost a plus 1. His, you know, effective true shooting percentage is up to 65%. He's never been above 57 in his career. His effective field goal percentage is 63%. You know, he's finishing at the rim at 63%. His mid-range shot is up. His three-point shooting is just like, it's on not even a hockey curve. It's just on like a shot to the moon. He went from, you know, in 2022, he was shooting 27% from three. Then he went to 36, and now he's at 45. You know, and he just continues to get good looks. So yeah, he's been awesome. His contract is fantastic. I think Nembhard has been a great, you know, backup point guard. McConnell's been fantastic. You know, everybody else on the team seems to be doing well. The one that's also, I guess you have to look at, you know, the other two concerns is I've personally liked Obi Toppin, what I've seen from him just eye test wise, but he's not doing something right for Carlisle because he continues to get put on the bench. And then every time he gets benched, Carlisle's talking about guys need to rebound and defend. And it's like, it's right after Obi makes a mistake. And again, eye test wise, I really like what he's providing, but I think I'm not sure if Obi is clicking with the way that Carlisle wants this team run is all I can say. Cause it just, he seems to have a really hard time staying on the court. But I do like what he's providing. And then of course, you know, the Jarris Walker thing just continues to kind of be befuddlement, especially as a guy like Shepard is playing more and more. And gotta give Shepard looks awesome. Like he looks really good for a late first round pick.
And I would have guessed it was because of his offense, but really his defense has been what, to me, like, wow, like this kid's got something there. And that is not what I would have expected out of him his rookie year.
No, I mean, it's why you look at that and it's like, I watched him last night. It's like, this is like a rotation player. Like this is a guy who could play on a playoff rotation, like be the 7th, 8th guy to come in. It just makes me wonder, like, why can't Jarris Walker I think Jarris Walker can do that. Like, I don't know why he couldn't play the defense that Shepard played last night, but provide a little more offensive. Like, I'm not sure what is going on there, because the times that we've seen Jarris Walker play in the NBA, he's looked good and looked electric and had kind of a really athletic bounce, but he's not playing. So I don't know what that one is about. Maybe it's an Obi Toppin type situation where him and Carlisle just aren't clicking right. Don't know. But anyway, those are some other thoughts I have on the rest of the team, just kind of pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I got a couple trivia things here. Not really trivia, but Aaron Nesmith, his sophomore year, his last year at Vanderbilt, he shot 8.2 threes a game. What do you think his percentage was?
I mean, I'll say like, geez, it's either a trick question and he shot like 42%, but he wasn't a super high draft pick. So I'm going to say it's probably like 34% or something in that range.
52% from three on 8.2 attempts per game.
My God.
I know. I'm like to me, so that's what I looked it up because what's that?
How does that go into how does that not get more draft attention?
Right. I mean, I guess there is a smaller subset because it was a COVID year, but still I think maybe he got hurt that season. Maybe I can't exactly remember what happened, but to me, because I looked it up because I'm like, all right, his 3-point ascension has been crazy. So like, what happened? And then I'm like, well, he was a great shooter in college. My goodness. I mean, even the season before that, he was 33% on 5 attempts a game, and then I just skyrocketed his sophomore year.
Wow.
And then the other one was Jarris Walker. We talked about his, every time he plays, he produces. In the G League, he's played 12 games. He's averaging 22 and 6 with 4 assists per game. So, I mean, like in the G League, he's absolutely just dominating the competition there. Like very much is too good for the G League. But, I appreciate that the Pacers are playing him there to get him some time and some minutes and stuff. But he would be nice to see in the rotation every now and again.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like some of the outside of the 3-point shooting, but dude, he's shot pretty well from 3 in the NBA. I mean, you're talking an unbelievably small subset. I don't have this. I'd have to take a second to pull the stats here. Maybe you can pull his 3-point shooting stats in the NBA. But he had a couple against the Suns. Like, it's not like he's just a complete hot mess, and him versus Shepherd. Shepherd's had some bad shots, and I don't expect a guy to come in as a complete deadeye as a rookie. That's one where I just continue to kind of scratch my head because I don't want to speed the timeline up. But again, as I look at, this team has a much higher ceiling than I think I was expecting at the beginning of the year based on the way they play against the Celtics and the Bucks. And then with the, Embiid being out and just kind of how the East looks right now, there's a world where I could see this team just playing really well in the playoffs. I think their problem is like what we talked about, just kind of that consistency during the regular season, which that comes with time. That's kind of like what a team like Boston just has, where they can just grind this stuff out and just get games out and like finish games in the third quarter. That's going to take 2 or 3 years for this Pacers team, but this does feel like a team that it gets to the playoffs. That's when young teams can really thrive because it's like, all right, now you're just up all the time and you can play at a high level. So I just look at this as like having another young player like Walker, like get him some reps now. I don't know. I'm very curious about it. And especially with the concern that you and I have both talked about with Mathurin, if Mathurin's going to kind of plateau at the level he's at, maybe, you could see Walker kind of take that role and maybe Mathurin becomes a trade chip next year. And you could just have Walker fill that role because that's the thing with, I hate to keep coming back to Mathurin on this one, but it's like Mathurin does kind of run a different style of offense than the rest of the team. He's very ball dominant, very needs to kind of clear out and drive and do his thing, which is very unlike how the rest of this team kind of operates. And you do wonder, it's like I don't know, but it's like Walker could take that role, but he can't take it unless he gets some minutes.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Walker is when they were playing him at the 3, like, he is long and lanky and has the size to guard wings in the, stud wings that you're going to face if you want to be, a contender. Like to me, that's the Pacers' biggest weakness right now is size on the wing. And so, with that said, if you've got a Jarris Walker guy who can guard, literally 5 through 2, that plays a big difference in what you're able to do matchup wise. especially in the playoffs. And obviously we're not in practice every day or whatever the case may be, and we don't know why he's not playing. But man, when he's in, like he looks the part.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, you look at the Pacers, like where we're at for the second half, where they're at right now. They're in the 6th spot, 31-25. They're 1 game ahead of the Heat in the win column. They're tied, obviously, in the loss column at 25, and they're tied with the Magic at 25 losses. So the only reason they're above those 2 teams is the win. It feels like the 76ers are going to kind of continue to keep falling down to earth. And so it feels like between the 76ers, the Pacers, the Heat, and the Magic, that's 4 teams fighting for 2 locked-in playoff spots. How do you see this playing out in the second half, and what would to you be a good result for the second half of the season going into the playoffs?
Yeah, look at the standings, and I'm kind of, it's silly to play this game, but I'm kind of looking at like who would they match up better with in the second round?
I love it.
Which is just so silly to do. We haven't won a playoff series since what, 2015?
It's been a while.
It's been some time.
Yeah.
So like for me to just like, okay, they're gonna win the first round.
Yeah, first round's done. That's done. Yeah.
But I look at where they're at currently, and I look at the 6th seed, and right now they would be matched up with the Bucks in the first round, which I like.
Yeah.
And then the Cavs have the 2nd seed. I actually think that'll end up getting flipped. I think the Cavs will come back down to earth a little bit, and I think the Bucks will ascend to that 2 spot.
I agree.
So then you're playing the Cavs first round, and then second round you're probably playing the Bucks, which I like. If you move into that 4 seed or 5 seed, then you've got a Knicks, or at this point it might be like the Heat. I don't know. It depends on what the Sixers do and if they kind of crater, which I think they might. But if you're that 4-5 game, then you're playing the Celtics pretty much no matter what in that second round, which I don't love. But again, it's silly for me to look at second round matchups over first.
Yeah.
But where I see it happen, I mean, they're right in the thick of it for. I mean, honestly, they could ascend to the 3 seed. I don't see that happening, or they could go all the way down to the 8 seed, which would really stink. I mean, I think like success would be if they at least stayed where they're at or go up. If they move down into the play-in game, that just it creates a different animal that you don't really want. Like you want to be in the playoffs, obviously. If you move into that 7 or 8 seed, then then you've got more games to worry about, and anything can happen in 1-game matchups, as we saw in the in-season tournament. So, and then right after that, you're playing the Celtics or the Bucks probably in the first round. So, ideally, they can stay 6 or better, and I think they will. I think that this break here at the All-Star break, they don't play again until next Thursday, which is a week from when we're recording this. And they've got some time to heal some things. Siakam's got some time to run through stuff with probably Carlisle and get some workouts in. And then with everything being here, it's not like, guys are going to be all over the place. Like, I'm assuming most guys will at least stay in the city for the weekend just because of all the festivities and stuff going on. I know a lot of guys during All-Star break will kind of go on a quick little vacation or whatever the case may be. I know if I was on the team, I would stay in the city to see all the hubbub and all that.
Yep.
But with that said, they'll have some time to just like gel, hang out. And that's part of like becoming a team, with Siakam coming aboard. That was one thing I liked last night when they won. The camera pans to Siakam and he's just yelling like, good work, Shep. Good work, Shep. Like, he's like, to me, that's like the stuff you want to see as like a star player comes aboard. And so that all those things I think make a difference, and I think that this break is coming at a great time for the Pacers to get healthy. I know Haliburton's going to play in the All-Star game, but like I'm not too worried about like injury management there. The All-Star game is very much a glorified scrimmage, and so it's not like he's going to be like really testing that hamstring or anything. So he'll kind of have another week to recover from that. So I just think the break came at a good time. It's time to reset. Pacers can kind of get to know each other a little bit better with the new pieces and stuff. Because, with McDermott coming aboard, he had his best game as a renewed Pacer last night as well. So he can get acclimated to things too. So I think 6 or better is a success. It's a success, and I think they get it.
Yeah, I mean, with the weekend coming up, I am excited for the All-Star game in that for so many years as a Pacers fan, it feels like we had a guy who was, got voted in on the bench, and then whether it's like Jermaine O'Neal or a young, Paul George. I don't know the last time we had a starter in the All-Star game. And it always feels like, even last year with Haliburton, it's like he plays a little bit and then, they're always getting subbed out. And it's like, all right, we're going to go to, Harden and Durant and LeBron. It's like those guys, and we had guys in the All-Star game where it's like, I want to see Jermaine O'Neal do well. But it's like, someone's got to pass on the ball and it's like, he's not a high enough star to kind of get that. This could be a really fun All-Star game because it not always in an indie. It's like Haliburton's a starter, so he should finish the game, but he's also in a position where like he's a perfect player for an All-Star game. Like he's going to throw tons of wild passes, tons of crazy stuff, tons of assists. Like players are going to get him the ball because they know they'll get it back. So I think I could see him being highly involved. I see a world where he could be the MVP just based on him doing a couple of bananas passes and maybe throwing a couple of deep threes. I'm not saying he will be. It'd be kind of nuts, but this is a lot, the All-Star game is a lot about storylines, and the MVP stuff, it's not like people give a ton of effort into thinking about that. It's kind of like, oh, he played well. I mean, if Tatum,
Michael Jordan won the All-Star game MVP his last year with the Wizards, so it's not like, it's not.
Yeah, well, if Tatum goes for like 70, whatever he had, like 60 in the All-Star, if something like that happens, not going to get it. But there's a world where I could see him being the All-Star game MVP, and especially as he's starting to do, like, we didn't even talk about it, that pass off the backboard in New York and then to pass it off. It's funny, I had not seen that before, but then they showed a clip where like Kobe did the exact same thing like 12 years before in MSG, which blew my mind. That was high level basketball IQ, but just high level showmanship. That was really cool, because you see that in the lead up to the All-Star game. It's like, all right, man, this guy could do some really cool stuff in the All-Star game.
Yeah, my hot take is Tyrese Haliburton breaks the assist record in the All-Star game. That's my hot take.
I think if he does that, he wins MVP.
Which I'm not exactly sure what that record is. Let me look that up. But my guess would be like 16. I don't know.
I'm curious what the This Is Awesome podcast, which is both look up stuff live right now. I'm curious if there are odds for the NBA All-Star game MVP.
Oh, I would have to think so, right?
You'd think so. I'm pulling up FanDuel right now. As I pull that up, So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see him in the 3-point contest. It'd be cool to see
Magic Johnson, 22.
22.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
But if you think about it,
but he's had it in the game.
Points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, come on, FanDuel. Let me log in. But so I'm actually going on Saturday night. I'm super excited. I've never been to a Saturday night. I've never been to an All-Star game thing. We're sitting in the 500 levels, so we're kind of mid-court, a little bit higher than I'd like to be, but tickets were also expensive. But taking my wife and my son and one of his friends. So very excited for that.
Shout out to that friend, man. Like that's like a core memory of like, being a kid. Like your buddy invites you to the All-Star game stuff. Like that's big time.
Yeah, it's a solid friend move. Yeah, we're setting it up. Man, they have All-Star game. The odds are out now. More wagers. Hold on. I know this is horrible. Let's see. To play, to score points, player points.
I've seen Giannis at plus 500.
Okay.
LeBron James at plus 550. Tatum plus 600. Durant plus 800. Haliburton's plus 1,000.
Oh, I will put money on. What side are you on for that?
What's that?
Are you on? I'm on FanDuel. I don't see it there. Which one are you on?
I'm not sure. I'm on Insiders Betting Digest.
Tony's on the dark web. 1,000 to 1, dude. I take that. I'd throw $10 on that. I mean, like, there's.
Heck yeah. He's got better odds than Steph.
Yeah, I mean, and plus
and Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Probably won't happen because guys who get a bunch of assists, it's kind of normal for the All-Star game. But again, if he's breaking the assist record, so if he can get to like 24 assists and then have a couple of like killer step back threes, I could see it happen.
If he's pushing for the record, guys are gonna like want him to get it too.
Right.
Like the NBA is like that fraternity where it's like I wanted to be a part of this. So guys will like help him try to get that too. I feel like.
Well, and also like having, we're all Pacers fans here, but watching him, like when I take somebody new to a game this year, I'm like, you got to watch you've got to watch him. Like the way he makes passes is just like it's very reminiscent of Magic Johnson, and that like there's a showmanship aspect to it where he doesn't just pass the ball. He's always like he just makes it look way better than it needs to in a very fun way. But to go back and answer my own question, what I would look for in the second half, I think I'm exactly where you're at. Like I think at this point, I would be disappointed if they're in one of the play-in games. As you look at it, I think it's tough. I think the Heat and the Magic are going to be good, but they are uneven young teams as well. So I think it's going to be kind of a fight between them and the Pacers. And that's why I look at games like last night. You've got to just figure out a way to win some of these bad games, because I think it's going to be a 1 or a 2 point difference between, all of these teams. I do see the 76ers falling out of this spot. So I do think it's 3 teams, Pacers, Heat, and Magic, looking for 2 spots. So that's the part that makes me feel a little bit better as well.
And Jimmy Butler's away from the Heat right now, right? Like he's on like a leave of absence.
Is he?
I thought I saw something about that.
It's possible. It's weird because I don't. But it is like 3 for 2 because I don't see the Bulls or the Hawks stepping up and doing anything to get into it. And as we've mentioned, the Pacers' schedule, while not amazing, it is relatively soft. Like in your next couple of games, you have home for the Pistons and the Raptors. You're at the Spurs. You come home, you have a 3-game set against the Bulls, Nets, and Cavs. The Cavs are good, but 2 of those are bad teams. And you're at the Pistons again. You have 2 more games against the Pistons. You have your next back-to-back of 2 teams in the same, back-to-back. You have the Pelicans, which are okay, but you have the Nets. They're not great. You finish the season against, I don't know where they'll be, but the Heat, the Raptors, the Cavs, and the Hawks. It's a softer schedule for the Pacers, I think, this second half, and I think that's going to help them out as well. But I'm with you. I think the 6th seed, to me, is kind of the ideal spot. I think from seeding and matchups and all that, I think the 6th seed is kind of where you want to be, and I think that's probably the height of where you can get maybe the 5 if the Sixers fall. I don't know, but we'll have to see. But I think one of those 5-6 spots is what you really want to shoot for, and then obviously you want to be healthy. I'd like to see Jarris Walker play a little bit more. I think you just want to continue to see Haliburton, slowly take a step up. He did some things, again, one game sample size, some last night. Well, he had a nice strip at the end of the game. Like, just if he can start elevating his defense just like a notch, just get a little bit better. I think some of that's going to come in the offseason with time to get stronger. And then I think also just seeing, it's more eye test, but just how can Siakam integrate himself in this offense a little bit better, where it doesn't feel because right now it still kind of feels disjointed. Like our offense runs, then
it's a little clunky.
Yeah, and then it's like then we go to Siakam and let Siakam do what he wants to do, which is just the nature of Siakam having played kind of ISO ball for 5 years in Toronto, like playing this. The Pacers are running a very different system than a lot of other teams. Like this is kind of like it took Durant, and he's a hell of a player. It took him like a year to figure out how to play in the Warriors system. And I think this is very similar to what the Warriors run, where it's a lot of motion, there's a lot of things going on. The ball should be moving quickly, and like it'd be good to see Siakam get a little more integrated in that also in the second half.
Yeah, I will say like he's already reaping some benefits from Haliburton kind of taking the eye of the defense. I mean, he's shooting 41% from 3 as a Pacer. As a Raptor this season, in 39 games, he was shooting 31.7%. So like even some of the benefits are already starting to pay off for him. Some of that's just a smaller sample size, and he's shooting well right now. But yeah, if you look at his numbers as a Raptor versus a Pacer, he's about down a point per game. He's rebounding better. He's shooting free throws worse, but he's shooting threes better. And his field goal percentage is up by about 5%. So he's that's a good thing because he, as you mentioned, he's still integrating himself. It's still a little clunky, and he's still putting up pretty good numbers. Now, some of that was with Haliburton out, but to me, I'm with you. It can only go up from here, which is pretty good, pretty cool, because it's really hard for these mid-season integrations to just happen seamlessly.
Yep. Well, and that's something that, while it was concerning with Siakam about his 3-point shooting numbers in Toronto had been going down, I look at this and it's like, I think if you play with Haliburton, the style this team plays, you're going to get a lot of open threes. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see as players come into this system, year over year, how their 3-point shooting percentages change. Like you look at a guy like Obi Toppin, went from, in his career 30%, 30%, 34 this year, shooting 40% from three. And it's like, that's a 6-point difference from last year and a 10-point percentage point difference from 2 years ago. And I think a lot of it's just based on like Obi Toppin's getting wide open threes. Like just when he's shooting a three, he's basically wide open. And I think most NBA players can shoot 38% or higher if they're shooting a wide open three most of the time. And with the way Haliburton plays, he just gets dudes a lot of open threes. Like you look at, I'm going to do it live, but like you look at Miles Turner, his 3-point shooting percentage has gone a little bit down this year. So bad example to bring up. It feels like he's shooting better.
It's because Haliburton's been injured.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take you at that. But I think most guys' 3-point shooting percentage is going to go up. The last thing I'll say before I go into one last topic, it's nice to see Doug McDermott come back, but this is definitely for my brother-in-law, Joe. The years that McDermott was here, Joe and I went to a good number of those games. And McDermott always frustrated me because it felt like he just missed a lot of important threes or open threes. And sorry, Doug, if you're listening, but one of my favorite jokes was like Joe and I are sitting there flipping through the program. It's like a picture of McDermott, like, a shot of him next to his stats, like him shooting. I'm like, I guarantee he missed that shot. Like whatever he was doing, like he was shooting a marketing thing, like he probably missed it. And Joe loved that. And I was thinking about that when I turned on the Pacers game against the Knicks, and I hadn't seen McDermott play with the Pacers again. Turn it on. It's like second play of the game that I'm watching. McDermott has like an open top of the key three and like airballs it. I'm just like, oh God, like we can't come back to this again. McDermott's probably going to be a rental here. As we do on this pod, big picture for the rest of this season, I think this is the team that we have. There is the buyout market. It is funny. You look at the top 10 players in the buyout market. And what's funny is 3 of them were already Pacers: Corey Joseph, Korsmats, who I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and then Marcus Morris, all of which were on the Pacers at one point in the last 2 weeks. So we could have kept them. So I doubt we're getting those guys. And the rest of it, it's like, Killian Hayes, Joe Harris, Gallinari, Evan Fournier would be kind of interesting, although I'm not sure. Seth Curry, I think he's staying in Charlotte. Davis Bertans with the Hornets. I just don't see us playing in the buyout market. I don't think that's an area we need to play. And it's also, this is a Ryan Russillo take, which I absolutely love. Every year it's like everyone goes bananas on like, oh, buyout market. Like, oh my God, like they got, Cavs got Kevin Love again or whatever. It's like, oh, this is like, and it's like none of these guys really ever amount to anything in the playoffs. Like the last buyout guy who really swung a title is probably going to be the first. So I don't think it's important. I don't think you're swimming in those waters. And so I just don't think, I don't think any of these guys are going to be paced. So I think the team that we have is the team that we have, which I think is kind of what they should do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Roll with what you got. Figure out the cohesion of this group, these last 20 games, and try to do something, in the playoffs that, would get people excited for next year. But yeah, I don't foresee us playing in the buyout market this year. Mainly because, as you mentioned, we already had all those guys.
Yep.
and let them go. So I'm with you. I don't see us playing in that.
Last thing we talked about in the last podcast. I'm going to bring it up again just because it's fun, and we'll probably bring it up for most of this, end of this season. Until we get to the playoffs, we'll focus on the playoffs, and then we'll talk about the offseason. But, stuff's starting to percolate out there in like little spots about Paul George. So just take 2 minutes for a fever dream, just fun. Bleacher Report had an article a couple days ago titled, Paul George, subject of growing whispers about a possible Pacers return. There was an article on like Basketball Forever Instagram. Again, I don't know how legitimate all these things are, but you're starting to see a lot of little breadcrumbs come. Like there was a picture they posted of like Haliburton, Siakam, and Paul George all in Pacers uniforms. Again, it's a random, but it had, 3,000 shares, but it's out there in kind of the basketball Twitterverse. There's a little bit of smoke out there. Like, I don't know if there's fire to go with it. like I joked before, if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in the next 96 hours, as now is the collusion time. You have Paul George here. You have Haliburton here. Like, everybody's here. Now would be the time to collude and show him what a contract. Here's what a contract could look like, Paul. Like, this is what it could be. This is what 13 hanging in the rafters would be. Do you make anything of the little bit more smoke we've seen in the last week of this Paul George to Indiana thing? Or do you think this is, I don't know. Do you want to have fun with it, or do you want to just tell me, like, just shut up and get over myself and this isn't going to happen?
No, I love it.
Let's go.
I'm all in on trying to read all the breadcrumbs and tea leaves and whatnot. I saw that somebody asked him about it a couple days ago, and basically said, like, hey, Kawhi wants you to sign a contract here with the Clippers, and he just said that's the goal. So he didn't say, like, yeah, that's definitely happening, like, I'm staying here. Then there's an article that came out yesterday that was interesting. Like, just the timing of it was weird, because he's going back to Indy for the All-Star game, and they were asking, like, do you think your number should be retired as a Pacer? And, like, went very in depth on his time as a Pacer, and how he grew up here. And it's just interesting. Like, that could have been completely unplanned. Like, just a reporter asked him about it, so he answers it. Or it's like, he's starting to plant those seeds. Like, players play the media for sure. Like, on certain articles and topics and things like that. And if they don't want to talk about it, they won't. So, like, I'm not saying 100% he's coming to the Pacers, but, like, there has been at least some indication. And then, as you mentioned, Jake Fisher, who's an NBA reporter, said there are whispers in the NBA landscape that's what Paul George wants to do. He and Tyrese are getting close on each other's podcasts, stuff like that. So, like, there's a lot of like positive signs that it could at least happen. Like, could come out tomorrow that the Clippers extended him, and
right,
that squashes that immediately. But until that Clippers extension is signed, I think you're going to hear these rumors kind of getting louder and louder.
I agree. I mean, I could also see a world where the Clippers extend him, and then we got to offer some things back. It could be a sign and trade where it's like, and honestly, that may not be the best. That may not be the worst option either. And not that I want to start losing people, but this is where you could look at, do you put Miles Turner and or Mathurin in a sign and trade? And then, the Clippers have, like, no picks. Like, they have no picks until I think like 2030. I think right now they literally have no picks because they've given up all the picks they can. They'll get a pick this year for 2030 or something that they could trade. So, I mean, there's a world, if you're the Pacers, you just got a plethora of second round picks. You got a bunch of your own firsts. Like, you could trade, 2 firsts and 2 seconds and, Miles Turner for Paul George. And that, that clears up the salary cap space where you could then sign, you'd have whatever George is at $30 million and add Siakam for $30 million, and you're just barely over the cap. Like, you're not getting into double apron stuff, but yet you got 3 guys on kind of max deals. Like, that's a way to do it. So I also think if the Clippers re-sign him, I'm not sure that's the end of the world either, because it could be part of a sign and trade. Because if you're the Clippers, and if you're the Pacers, I don't know if that's awful, because you probably need to move either Turner or Mathurin. I'm just looking at their salary structure for next year. Like, I think Nesmith to me is untouchable the way he plays, and that salary number. But maybe McConnell, like, not that you're going to have to move somebody to bring in Paul George. Like, you just or the Pacers are going to be like at $180 million. It just seems very odd for them, a team that's never been in the cap, to be like, hey, we're double apron like immediately. So we'll see, but there's definitely a lot of smoke out there that's really interesting. And I would love to see it. It's funny, you talk about Paul George having his number retired. To me, it's like, it's funny. The Pacers have, and I love it, that, you get to a game at Gamebridge with 3 minutes before the game starts, they play this legacy video, which is really cool. It ends right at the buzzer when this game starts. And it's kind of like a montage of all the history of the Pacers' great moments. And it kind of goes through the eras, and it has the years, like the famous players going around the banners. Paul George is not in that. Like, and I think he had some great moments. He had a dunk on LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, took us to 2 Eastern Conference Finals. We had a 1 seed in the East. Lance Stevenson's in it. Like, that whole era is like the block by Hibbert against the Knicks. There's like a Lance Stevenson, like, drive to the basket, and then it goes immediately to Haliburton. And I don't think it's a slight, but I also think it's like a very much like, hey man, this dude's still playing in the league. Like, we're not going to, it's just interesting. It's interesting he's not in there. So it's like the idea of us retiring his jersey is bananas. Like, he can't even make the intro video. But I would like it, and I don't want to start trading players off this team yet. Like, let's get to the playoffs and have a nice little run. But I do think a Siakam, Paul George, Tyrese Haliburton threesome is really, really. I mean, you add that to Nesmith, that's a really solid starting four.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's exciting stuff. It's nice for the Pacers to be even in these conversations and rumors of like big name possibly wants to come join you, and it all comes back to Tyrese Haliburton. Like Pascal Siakam's awesome, great player, but it all comes back to Tyrese Haliburton. Guys want to play with him. He's fun, he's exciting, he's going to get you the ball. Like you don't have to worry about like the James Harden stuff or
Right.
whatever the case may be, where it's like, am I ever going to touch the ball if this guy comes aboard? Or if I play with this guy, like, no, that's not the case at all. Like this dude's going to get you the ball, and it's fun, it's exciting, and I do think it will hinge too on how the Clippers do this season too. Like, if they win the NBA title, I can't see necessarily Paul George is like, all right, I'm done here. But there's also the other side where like they make the NBA finals, but they don't win it. Is he like, all right, let's run it back and try to get another one? So there are some pieces over there that you kind of wonder like, what all that would mean. But
well, I think the flip also counts for the Pacers. I think how the Pacers do, I think is a hinge piece of it also. Like if they make the playoffs as a 5 or a 6 seed, as a 5 seed, and they win their first series like in 6 games, and maybe they take the Celtics to 6 in a really great series, like that's pretty cool. Like that's kind of like that, to take it to IU basketball, it's kind of like that 2011 2012 team that beat Kentucky and like had a really good run. It's like they start the next season, like the minute that Kentucky wins a title, it's automatic like, oh man, this IU team's won the country. It's like now if the Pacers finish with that, it's like they suddenly become kind of the hot, sexy pick for next year. It's like this team could really take a step up. And then it's like you're Paul George, you add to that, and it's like not that you want to win the offseason and lose the season, but it's like you could really make a splash, and suddenly it's like the Pacers become the hot pick to be the dark horse in the East, versus if they drop down to the 7-8 seed in the play-in and they lose 2 play-in games, and then it's like, all right, that was cute, but like this team kind of sucks when it comes down. Like that could have the other effect where it's like, all right, man, like did they already miss their window? And it's like, are they even good? Like, so I think the Pacers have a little bit of hand in this also, where I think this is, again, getting to the playoffs, getting to a series, performing well really matters. I think even on the trying to get a guy like Paul George, I think that matters too on the Pacers side.
Yeah, like you mentioned, is it more like of a Hawks situation where like they were kind of the darling of the East, and they had
Right.
Trae Young and everything, and then they went and traded for Murray, kind of like the Pacers traded for Siakam, and now they're like not a good team at all.
Hot mess.
Yeah, they're a hot mess. So you don't want it to turn into that, and so I'm with you. Hopefully, as we mentioned, they stay in that 6 range, can win a playoff series, and then you can start having conversations about like, all right, how do we contend?
Yep. All right. Well, it'll be cool. Hopefully, I'll see you down for some of the weekend festivities. If you are at the All-Star Saturday, give us a shout out. Send us a note. Let us know. Looking forward to it. And enjoy the All-Star weekend. Enjoy kind of Tyrese Haliburton's weekend. I'm just bummed there's not a Pacer in the dunk contest, but so be it. Obi Toppin's brothers, and maybe Obi will step up and like throw a pass or something. We'll see. And then we may be off for a week just because the Pacers don't play again until, when's their next game? We have kind of a week off. They play the 22nd, so it's a week from today, next Thursday. So it may not be a ton to talk about, so we may take 1 week off and then come back, the week of the 28th. By the way, I'm going to that Pacers New Orleans game with my son. I'm taking my son to New Orleans. He wanted to see a road game, so we're going to New Orleans to see the Pacers. So that's one of 2 road games I'm going to. My brother-in-law and I, the next week, are going on a golf trip in Dallas, and then we're going to go to the Pacers Mavs game. My cousin has season tickets down there, so I'm turning into a Pacers roadie in early March. So there you go.
You and Naptown Seth.
Yep.
He's always at all the games.
Yeah. All right. Might need to see Jared Morris. Go see him in Dallas while I'm down there. So yeah, we might have a week off, but enjoy the festivities. And Tony, as always, thank you for joining us. Great to talk to you. And everybody out there, thank you guys for listening. And for Scott, this is the Right Up Meridian podcast, signing off.